Welcome to the Old Men of the Three Things with JJ Redick and the Dunker Spot, Nekias, Duncan, and Steve Jones. Fellas, I hope you're doing very well on this Monday morning. We have reached essentially the apex of the NBA season. It is the week of the NBA Finals, and I know you guys will be doing your full Finals preview on the Dunker Spot, so please check that out. LeBron and I did, it's mostly Celtics, but there's some Dallas stuff in there as well. We did a finals preview that'll be out on Mind the Game, and Zach Lowe and I are recording a finals mailbag later today. So rather than spend today's episode focusing on the Celtics and the Mavs only, I thought it'd be fun if we just did a playoff award show. And each of us were allowed to pick 3 awards. They could be based on Oscars. They could be based on something that we came up with that on our own, like Nekias. We just got what his awards are. Very excited to hear these. So how I think we should do this, we'll just go one at a time, and we'll say our 3 awards. We can discuss each one. But today's episode, let's just have some fun. All right. Let's start with Steve. Steve, what are your 3 awards? And then let's break these down.
So my 3 awards are best sound.
So
which crowd brought it the most in the playoffs? I have a best historical documentary. Bear with me on that one, but it's just fun facts that happened for the first time in these playoffs that I fell down a rabbit hole because I was like, wow, a whole lot of stuff happened. I forgot about this. And then I have a best cinematography. Which series gave us the most cinema? Those are my 3.
Okay. I like that. That's great. Where do you want to start?
Let's go best sound.
Best sound. I love it.
Do I give my nominees?
Okay, let's do it.
I had nominees. I had the New York Knicks in the Garden. I had the Indiana Pacers crowd. They were active. Dallas Mavericks, especially during that Clipper series, they were fun. And the Minnesota Timberwolves. I went with the Knicks in the Garden. Yeah, that was a really fun run that they had. The crowd was live. We had every old Knick jumping up and down, celebrating. That was really fun. So I wanted to salute the Knicks fans for that. That's my first one.
Nekias, thoughts on that?
Honestly, I don't have qualms. Like, those are good nominees. Like, I'm glad that you snuck the Mavericks in there, as the crowd is loud and so are the rims. And so, like, just in terms of pure volume, like, they may have an argument over the Knicks. But I'm with you. The Knicks crowd was great. So no qualms here.
I think there's something that's really cool about the Garden in general. And if you ask most players, what's your favorite road arena to play? They'll say it's the Garden. And there's something about the stage, New York City, the fans, and it felt like throughout this season and certainly in the playoffs, they took it up another notch. There's also something really cool, and I wish more teams would do this on a regular basis, about having former players that are part of beloved teams sitting courtside going crazy during a playoff game. Like John Starks being OD is just now, I'm pretty sure all these guys in some capacity are getting paid as ambassadors by the New York Knicks, and they get the courtside seat. So it's a sweet gig. It's a sweet gig. I'm looking at you, Orlando. I'm looking at you, LA Clippers. Come on. I'm looking at you, Philly. Let's get us courtside. Come on. I agree with this. The Knicks thing. By the way, Mavs, I had 3 of those games in the first round against the Clippers. Phenomenal crowd. And I would just in general say the Boston crowd is always awesome. So I think in terms of sound, we may be, as good as the Knicks were, we may be getting something on par during the NBA Finals with these 2 teams. Best historical documentary. There's each of you have one that I just can't wait to hear. This is the one for Steve that I'm excited about.
Hooray. So I did a Nekias thing. I had 15 facts that I ended up whittling down to 5. So I just wanted to salute to you, Nekias. Joel Embiid becoming the first player in NBA history with 50 or more points on fewer than 20 shots in a playoff game. Jamal Murray becoming the first player to hit 2 go-ahead shots inside the final 5 seconds in the same series. Jalen Brunson becoming the first player in NBA history to have 4 consecutive 40.5 assist playoff games. The Miami Heat making 23 three-pointers in Game 2 against Boston, which was the most ever by a team in a road playoff win in NBA history. And the Indiana Pacers shooting 67.1% in a Game 7 to have the highest field goal percentage in any playoff game in NBA history. That was the winner for me because I still don't know how and what I saw in that one. They lost their minds.
It's wild to think how well they shot from mid-range in the playoffs. And that game was certainly was an aberration historically, but within a few percentage points, it wasn't from the mid-range. It wasn't an aberration. Like Joe Mazzulla talks all the time about the expected shot value. So he's getting all those real-time stats within a game. He checks it at halftime. And, they obviously want to create a lot of threes. They want to generate good looks, all that stuff. And he's playing against a team that's going like 14 of 21 and a half from the mid-range. And you're just like, no, you're not supposed to do this. I think that's a great one. The Jaylen thing was special because it was more than just a game, Jamal Murray, of course, was great. The Heat, that was incredible. Joel, shout out to Joel. I think he's not going to win one of Nekias's awards. I have a feeling there is one particular award that Joel is not going to win. But yeah, man, the Indy thing was cool. I probably would have gone Jaylen Brunson if I had a vote on that one. I probably would have gone Jaylen, but it's all good.
Nekias, did you have a vote
on that one? Like those are all good. Like the Pacers one is fun. Like probably the Joel one, honestly, especially in light of what he had to deal with injury-wise this year and just the different types of defenses that the Knicks try to throw in and how they're trying to mix in the doubles, when to send them, when not to send them, et cetera. For him to have that kind of game in the midst of all of that, I just think was a lot of fun. And it's kind of a nice reminder that, hey, I may have only played like 40 games in the regular season. This is kind of what I was like this year. So that'll probably be my vote.
God, that series seems like it was so long ago. It feels like a distant memory. Feels like a distant memory. All right, best cinematography. By the way, you and I both had the same award, so you added this on, and I appreciate you having a backup plan. So
no worries. I always got to try and pivot. You know what I mean? Best cinematography. Which series gave us the most cinema? I had Knicks Sixers. I had Wolves Nuggets. I had Wolves Mavs. And then you always got to sneak a little indie film in there. So I had Cavs Magic.
You always got to sneak an indie film in there.
Hey, there's always something you ain't heard of on one of these award shows. Am I lying?
That's pretty true. Hey, you got to hold that one.
No disrespect to Cleveland and Orlando. It did go 7 games. I personally had a tough time because that Knicks Sixers series, while long ago, was very fun. The Wolves Mavs series was fun. I went with Wolves Nuggets. Just because haymakers, back and forth. Anthony Edwards screaming at every single person he can in Denver multiple times. What Jokic ended up doing, that was my one. That was the one for me.
Interesting.
I like it. I think there was so much in Knicks Sixers as we're just rehashing that series now. There were a whole lot of stoppages. But it's because of so many things happening in that game. And then you factor in both crowds on top of that. I think it's tough sledding, not choosing Knicks Sixers. So salute to you. I know that was not an easy decision for you. But yeah.
You're brave, man. You've got a lot of courage.
That was a lot.
The couple blowouts were tough, but then I think a Game 7 on the road where you're down 20 in the second half and then you just come back and absolutely dominate the rest of the game. I agree with you on that. The Knicks Sixers was so entertaining though. God, that series was good. That series was good. All right. Great awards. Nekias, why don't you go next? Please explain your 3 awards for this year's playoffs. And I don't know if you have nominees. I appreciate, Steve, you've done real work today.
Good stuff.
The backup plan and having a nominee for each one. I love it.
As someone who also had backup awards, I'm so glad that neither one of there's no overlap here. I can just roll with our top three. As far as my three awards, I have best screenplay, which I was trying to incorporate literal screening into it at some point, but it just ended up being like my favorite set piece of the postseason so far. So I do have nominees for those. The fan service award, any kind of fan interaction and or things that get the crowd hype. Steve is going to laugh when he hears what my selection was for very obvious reasons. And then the ethical hooper award, who got the tough playoff buckets, who did so with volume, who did so with efficiency. That was more straightforward, though a little bit of subjectivity did pop in. Had to dig deeper into a couple of other numbers to kind of split hairs, since there were a lot of nominees for that one. But those are my three.
I love it. Best screenplay. Best screenplay.
We're gonna get into, I had the fact that it's some kind of tying some kind of movie reference there. But best screenplay for me, that award is going to go to the Dallas Mavericks. Their double pick and roll with a back screen attached is going to do it for me. If you remember, after the PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford trades, the first PJ Washington bucket of the Dallas era was on that play. Double pick and roll for Luka Doncic, Tim Hardaway Jr. setting the back screen. OKC with a switch. Isaiah Joe ends up on PJ Washington. He gets a lob. Went to it a few times throughout the regular season, sprinkled in during the postseason. We saw it in particular in the game 5 against Minnesota, to where you get a lob for PJ Washington. They run it again. Rudy Gobert's like, absolutely not. That's not happening again. Let me drop back deeper. And Luka just walks into a floater, and Minnesota immediately calls timeout. Like, this is not what we're doing here. So that is going to be my gets the best screenplay award for me. Other nominees, I'm always going to be up for Spain/stat pick and roll. Shout out to Indy. Shout out to Boston. Shout out to OKC. The Lakers going guard screen into a dribble handoff with LeBron and AD against Denver in particular. They absolutely blitzed them on that the entire first round, though it did not matter in terms of the result. So I just wanted to sprinkle those in there.
I like it. That play in particular for Dallas, different sort of alignments. Sometimes it's an empty side. There was one in Minnesota where they ran it almost like an Oklahoma small, where I think it was Lively that was the big, but he went to go screen for PJ, and they top blocked PJ, and Gobert was so worried about Luka, and it was an empty side, and PJ just went backdoor for a layup, and then they ran it again in the second half. Like, there's a lot of options about. I think we talked about this. I believe we talked about this. Maybe it might have been with Legler. Like the double drag. Think about Maxey in the Knicks series. Brunson had some success with it, but that double drag, depending on which defender you're using as the first screener, could be the duck, could be the target, and of course you could put him as the second guy as well, just to create confusion. Is it an empty side? Is it a single side? Like all of this stuff. Double drag. It's a great play. I love it. I love it.
It's tough stuff. And then going to the game 5 again, I think it was Karl-Anthony Towns always defending the first screener there. So Luka just got 2 on the ball, and they just could not navigate the back end of it. It was very fun to watch. So quick shout out to the Dallas Mavericks, to Luka Doncic, as obviously we'll get to see them a little bit later this week. So I want to start with that one. With the fan service award, as Steve can attest to, I don't dig too deep into the like unwritten rules and all that good stuff. If there's one thing that I do hold on to with NBA players, if you have a fast break and you have a true breakaway, no threat of a chase down block, foul, et cetera, I do think you have the responsibility, if you choose to dunk, to give the fan something. It doesn't have to be a 360 between the legs or anything crazy. Give us a reverse. OG Anunoby gives us like the basic reverse dunk all the time. Give us something. And so for me, the fan service award goes to Obi Toppin for getting a breakaway in game 1 of the Knicks series and giving us a between the legs dunk. That's what it's supposed to be about. I do not want that being lost in history.
I don't want that
I don't want that to be
in history.
I'm just, hey
man,
he gets the salute for me. What's up, Steve?
2 points is 2 points, man.
That's true.
Get your 2 points in the playoffs. He missed that same dunk last time he went to New York. It's fine.
I think as a fan and someone who didn't dunk particularly frequently, once in my career, twice in college, I had some dunks in high school when I was young, but I've always thought about this, like, dunking is not boring. Like, and I feel like certain times, you know, the one I'm talking about, 1 foot, you go up with 2 hands and you just kind of gently put it over the rim.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Like,
Just yam it back. Throw it in.
that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I
Like,
agree
again,
with you on this one. Shout out to Obi Top. Obi was great in the playoffs.
he was just a fun run.
This
Did a
was
lot
a
of
good
things.
year for him, man. This was a good year for him. I actually said, now that I think about it, very early, I think it was Tommy's last Old Man of the Three Things in October before you guys and Legler came on full time. Tommy and I talked about underrated free agent signings, or maybe it was underrated acquisitions. I can't remember. Maybe it was just acquisitions in general. And I said, I think Obi Toppin could have a career year, a breakout year here for the Pacers. And it happened. I feel good. I don't remember my other 2 picks, so I'm fairly confident that I was wrong on those. So, but Obi was great this year. And I love the flair. I'm with you on this one, guys.
There we go. I just need to sprinkle that one in. The other nominees, Luka Doncic versus whoever that Mavs fan was. I mean, that Wolves fan was in Game 5.
Buddy.
I made the joke with Steve, like, hey, this is not a situation where you try to get clout and claim it was you. Just let that rock. You do not want your name attached to that. And then I think in both the Bucks series and the Knicks series, Tyrese Halliburton had some kind of interaction with a fan, a section, or something that just kind of activated him early in a couple of those games. And so I just got a good kick out of that. So shout out to friend of the program, Tyrese Halliburton. So those are my nominees for those.
There are certain guys, hold on, there are certain guys, by the way. Like, I feel like Luka has talked about this actually on this podcast, but I know you watch certain guys, and to me, it's like the last thing you want to do. Like, even with Tyrese, like, if he's kind of floating, and he floated some in the playoffs, and he floated some at the end. Like, if he's floating, the last thing you want to do is get him going. Luka, he normally has like the killer mode activated from the start, like he normally does. There are nights he doesn't. And he talked about it. Somebody says something to him. Somebody gives him a cheap shot. And it's like, okay, now it's on. And I just don't. It's not a good idea.
Shout out Bryson Tiller. Okay. Last one for me is going to be the Ethical Hooper Award. Who gave me the inside the arc non-rim buckets in the half court? Who did it at a high level? Who did it with efficiency? And just to placate some of the Twitter folks, you did get dinged a little bit for high foul drawing. So I wanted the unassisted buckets. It's going to be a round 1 nominee here getting the award for me, but I want to give a hat tip to Chris Middleton, who absolutely cooked in round 1 without Giannis. Dame also getting hurt in that series. But on shots inside the arc in the half court setting, non-rim, nearly 52% from the field on those shots. Outperformed his shot quality by over 14%, which is the highest among 25 players to take at least 50 of those shots. In that round 1, only 41% of his twos were assisted. As far as some of the other nominees that I thought about, that was around 56% for Pascal Siakam, 52% for Nikola Jokic, 14% for Shea, but wasn't as efficient on those shots. And then also the foul drawing element had to split some hairs somewhere. And so I just wanted to give a quick hat tip to Chris Middleton. Almost had Jaylen Brown for this one. Did want to make sure I said his name on the podcast. Did not forget he was up there in terms of the half court makes in this number. Also up there in efficiency as well. So it's really between him and Chris. We want to give the hat tip to Chris. So that is where I go with the Ethical Hooper Award.
Steve, you seem to have a very visceral reaction to this award.
I am stunned that you brought this award up to hand it to Chris Middleton. I just want you to know that. I want you to know that. Donovan Mitchell
also got tough buckets. A lot of threes, like the inside the arc portion.
Okay, so it's purely the inside the arc portion. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, that's your qualifier. Okay, that's fine.
The need for 2-pointers in the playoffs. And we talked about it a little bit with the Pacers, and it's gonna lead me right into one of my awards. So my 3 awards, and this is the one that Steve and I overlapped on, was Best Supporting Actor. My other one was Best Director, And my third was not. I don't think this is an Academy Award, but my other one was Best Innovator. And I'll start there. Because I think about coaching in the NBA and coaches that have had success for a long period of time. I think one of the markers of a coach that has had success for a long period of time is that he adapts to his players. He adapts to the evolution of the NBA. And in some cases, he says, fuck it. This is how we're going to play. And it's different. And it goes against probably some conventional norms. So my best innovator is Rick Carlisle. And you think about the Dallas teams with Dirk. I played for him with Luka, and I was in a playoff series. And I've said this before. He's probably the best tactician that I played for. And then we're sitting there, and obviously I'd watched a ton of Indiana. I've watched them throughout the playoffs, but we're sitting there in the coaches meeting before game one. And I talked about this on the air, so this is was not off the record. But he said, we are a concept team. We are not a set play team. And you think about that team, right? And what they were able to do offensively in the playoffs against the number 2 defense in the regular season in Boston, the number 9 defense in the regular season in the second round against the New York Knicks. Milwaukee, of course, middle of the pack, but they were the best offense in the playoffs. They obviously Boston still playing, so they could exceed them. They're the number 1 offense. There was no dip in efficiency from the regular season. And I think about the way they play, whether it's a make, a miss, it is all about getting the ball across half court within 2 to 3 seconds, sometimes less. And then it's like a race to see how much random shit we can run. And they don't take a ton of they didn't take a ton of threes in the regular season. They were about league average. They took even less in the playoffs. They play to their personnel strengths and they play to the group strengths. And it's different. It's different. I think about throughout that series, because I would call it every game. It's like, how would you game plan for this? It's just random. So as a opposing coach, you're going in there, Joe Mazzulla. It's like he said, there's so much noise. We got to. They create all this noise. We have to stick with what we're willing to give up, right? And I think Rick just did a phenomenal job throughout the year. But I think in particular in the playoffs, the way they played offensively, it's against the norm of how everybody plays, which is we're going to control the pace. We're going to manipulate every possession. We're going to try to create a mismatch on every possession. We're going to give the ball to our best player, and he's going to manipulate and control and command. It's not. It's TJ McConnell. It's Andrew Nemhard. Tyrese off the ball. Now all of a sudden, Aaron Nesmith's coming off a dribble handoff at 95 miles an hour. It's just a different way to play, and I loved it.
It was really fun to watch them. I think one of my favorite parts was they would be in these games and it would feel like the Pacers were down by 6 or 7. And then 2 minutes later, you look up and they're 5 of 7 from the field. And it's like, oh, they're still scoring, but they haven't gone away. And then the one thing that is funny, if you think about it, in that Pacers series, once Tyrese Halliburton went down and they're like, oh, Boston's switching. You know what? Let's just throw it in the post.
Yeah.
And that's really fun for a team that's go, pace, pace, pace. And it's like, actually, we can just get these post-ups real quick. Honestly, can I ask you a question, JJ?
No, yes.
Did you think?
Yes, you can. Of course you can.
Did you think Rick Carlisle, who used to stop everything to call out a set play, would be on a team that is a concept team and runs all the time?
I think it's just a testament to him as a coach, being able to adapt. Again, I played against those Dirk teams with Jason Terry and Josh Howard, where they basically at times were running flex. Josh Howard cutting along the baseline, pin down for Dirk, jet setting a pin down for Dirk. or Jet coming off one of those pin downs. It's just flex action at times. And then you go to like the Luka years, and when we were there, and it's like, all right, we're going to target that guy. We're going to target that guy. Luka brings the ball up. Let's go target. Let's play out of ghost screens, whatever. And then with the Pacers, it's just no rules. I mean, they certainly have concepts, but it's like, no, just go play basketball. And I've used this, but I was thinking about, I said this during the Philly series, and it's like, what makes Tyrese Maxey so hard to guard, even in the playoffs, is you can't get a hold of him, right? And outside of Miles Turner in games 3 and 4 looking to post in the middle of the paint against smaller players, and outside of the occasional Pascal Siakam end of shot clock ISO, they've got a team of guys that you just can't catch. It's just so random and quick and fast, and it's one thing to another, and all of a sudden they've made 5 out of 7 shots from 11 feet. It's just different. It's different. Best supporting actor. Who was your best supporting actor, by the way?
I'll give you my nominees. It was Derek Lively, Naz Reid, Nick Batum, and TJ McConnell.
Wow.
I went with people who just did not start.
Okay. I thought about it a different way. When you have a great film with a bunch of high level thespians that are very famous, and like the writing is like, there's certain times where you're like, oh, this person won an award because the writer said, I wrote this for them. And then there's other times where it's like an A-list cast and somebody's got to be the best supporting actor, right? And there are scenes where that person steals the show. And maybe the main actor, right? Maybe he also gets nominated. Maybe he also wins an award because he was so good. But there are points in the movie, there are points in the film where you're like, all right, the reason this film is great is because of those 3 scenes. And that guy killed it. And he wasn't the main guy, but he killed it. And he's a star. This is like, I'm trying to think of an historical example, but, Robert Downey Jr. is I think, a best supporting actor. He's a fucking phenomenal. He's an A-list guy, right? De Niro's been nominated, I'm sure, for a best supporting actor. Like, this is what I'm talking about. So my best supporting actor was Kyrie Irving. And I thought about each series, at times picking and choosing his spots, at times playing a little bit of a different role on the ball versus off the ball. I don't think they win that series in 6 against the Clippers without Kyrie, particularly in the second half. Certainly had some quieter games against Oklahoma City, but had some big moments. And then you go to the Minnesota series where he was so important, particularly in the fourth quarter of a number of those games. And you look at his splits. I mean, even in the OKC series, the scoring volume wasn't up. All right. But he had 6.2 assists per game, and he shot 42% from 3. So he was still a super effective player despite a lower volume. And then Minnesota, obviously, LA series, he just was like the best version of Kyrie, the Kyrie that we all love to watch hoop. So he was my best supporting actor. If there was let me ask you guys, if there was another nominee, because I have one other one that I think about in this same sort of ilk, and that's Jaylen Brown for me. Is like, if we're going to go with this sort of the second star, Jaylen throughout this playoffs has been incredible. Obviously won Eastern Conference Finals MVP, but Jaylen and Kyrie, there's a reason these two teams are in the NBA Finals. When your second guy has been as good as Jaylen and Kyrie, you're going to have a fucking chance to win every night.
Well, that just took my question off the board. My question to you was going to be, if you chose a Celtic for this award, who would it have been? And you went Jaylen Brown. So
yeah, it would have been Jaylen.
I guess beyond that, yeah, I think I'm pretty good on that front.
All right.
Kyrie's been great. I'm trying to think of a third person. Like, would Tyrese Maxey count because they got bounced early? Like, I'm trying to.
I don't know. It depends on what side of the discourse you fall on.
Would Pascal Siakam count?
There's a good one. There's a good one. All right. Last one, best director. I don't know that the Academy has ever had this, but we do have co-winners of this. And I just want to not that these guys haven't got a ton of love over the last week or two, but I just want to acknowledge, because we don't talk a lot about front office stuff here, but I want to acknowledge Nico Harrison, Brad Stevens, and certainly some pieces that were there before they got there, particularly your 1A, and certainly some sort of I wouldn't call them the core role players were there before these guys took over their positions. Mm-hmm. But Nico, the trade for Kyrie, that's worked out pretty well in the long term. The trade for PJ, the trade for Gafford, getting Derrick Jones Jr. essentially on a minimum contract. Brad, even going back to the D. White trade, turning Smart into KP, and then getting Drew for Brogdon and Rob. Like, the way these teams have been built, certainly have some players that have been drafted there, but just like timely trades, hitting on the lower end in terms of whether it's Peyton Pritchard later in the draft, although I think that was before Brad took over, but Sam Hauser, all this stuff. I just think these two guys have done an incredible job. Best directors, Nico Harrison, Brad Stevens.
I like that one. I was about to toss like, hey, you had a split for your own voted for one voter panel, but you mentioned the finals team, so no qualms from here. It makes sense. Just
gonna give maybe one guy, if a team wins, when a team wins, one guy gets the revote, the recount.
Can I circle back with a question really quickly?
Yeah.
With the Best Innovator Award, as you went with Carlisle, how close was Missoula for you?
It's a great question. It's probably for another podcast.
Fair enough.
Probably, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm not being cryptic. It's just, it's probably for another podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just say that. So, guys, always fun. Appreciate you guys. And we'll be checking in throughout the finals. Everybody go listen to the Dunker Spot NBA Finals preview, which will be out tomorrow.